This is the Hamilton Fire Swift Water Ropes and Knots review. The first series of knots that we're going to go over is going to be the family of 8, figure 8 knots. Take your piece of rope. We'll just start off with a basic 8. Basically, you're taking the rope around itself, one whole revolution. So we bring it over top of itself, underneath, back to the top side, and now through the hole. That is a basic figure 8. Now we're going to do a figure 8 follow through. Again, we cross the rope over top, bring it underneath, one whole rotation back through the center. We have our figure 8. This knot can be used around an anchor point, which you can't, the example being a power pole or a tree, something we can't get an actual bite over the top and bring it down to where we need it. We would put this knot somewhere within the rope, allowing a good end, enough end to run around the object that we're going to use for our anchor. Now all we need to do is just simply retrace this knot. So we already have the figure 8 in place. We come back around our object. Now we're just tracing it through. So coming underneath, following our guide, back underneath, around, over top, back under, one more time around the bite, and then back through this center here. And you should have retraced properly at that point, dressing up the knot, and you have a figure 8 follow through with a bite around an anchor point. The next figure 8, which is how we keep the majority of our rope bags and throw bags, keeper knots, is just a simple figure 8 on a bite. Take the rope, create a bite in your hand, like so, holding it. You're then going to wrap either side, it doesn't matter, one entire rotation. So coming underneath, around, back through, figure 8 on a bite. If you have need for a double figure 8 on a bite, the example being using one of the bites for an actual anchor plate and the second bite possibly for fall protection, for attachment point for fall protection for one rescuer, this is how you would do this. You need to create a very large bite to start with the knot. Then you bring your hand or your actual pivot point for the knot way down to allow for the long bite. Again, you're going to wrap around, underneath, back through, just like you did with the figure 8 on a bite. Now you're going to send the bite back through the top of the 8. You're going to create 2 loops. Now bringing this back over top, the actual top of the bite, back through these loops you've just created, back over top of those, and all the way down to the bottom of the 8. You can see you have the figure 8, and you have 2 bites that can be used for attachment. Again, not 2 separate anchors, but maybe 1 anchor or 2 attachment points for 1 anchor, a rigging plate, or simply 1 for the rigging plate and maybe a second attachment point for fall protections for a single rescuer. That's the double figure 8. Now we come to the last one of the hardest ones. It's one that we don't use very often on the river, more for high angle. Again, it gives us a second attachment point on a rope, would be the inline 8. We have the end of our rope attached back to the anchor. We have the rest of the working end of the rope going across whatever, some distance, and we need to create a second attachment point. To do that, if you're right-handed, you're going to, standing face forward, have the rope in your left hand with your right hand at your hip. Bringing the right hand from the hip, now holding the rope up to the left hand, you're going to create a loop. Lay the right hand loop to the outside of your hand. like so. Now reach underneath, grab that loop. You need to go over the top, underneath, and then back through the actual bite you're holding with the working end, pulling it through. When you do that, you have a figure eight follow through. It is important to check that the bite and the actual working end of the rope are both coming through the same hole together and not separated. That is an inline figure eight. Now we'll talk about the alpine knot or butterfly knot. This knot can be used anytime you need an attachment point on a rope line that you're going to be loading perpendicular to the system. So we've run maybe a high line or a movable control point, and now we need a line to drop down perpendicular to the system. To do that knot, you need slack on the rope. You are going to create 3 loops in your hand, whichever hand. You're going to take the outside, the loop closest to your fingertips, you're going to bring that into the thumb, crossing over. Once you get it there, you're going to hold it with your thumb. You're now going to take the middle loop, which is now the furthest or the most outermost to the fingertips loop that's left. You're going to grab that, bring it over top of the other 2 loops and underneath. Once it's underneath, you can let go of the ropes, pull that bite, pulling the ropes, and the last thing you're going to do is pull both ends of the rope to pop the knot, and you have an alpine knot or a butterfly knot. Now we're going to talk about the clove hitch. The clove hitch can be used as an anchor knot with a backup. It can be used to hoist tools up to a rooftop at a fire scene. It's used for a handcuff knot for rat. It's a very simple knot, and it's a very strong knot. It doesn't actually put any tight bends into the rope itself. They're just half hitches. The way to do that, there's a couple. Crossing the hands over, develop whatever system that works best. For me, this is the way that works best. I cross my hands over, grab the rope, I pull it across my body, and now I've created 2 loops. I have the actual working ends of the ropes to the outside of those loops. So to the inside of my body I have a working end with a loop. The outside hand, or my right hand, has a loop with the actual running end to the outside. I now take those, I have them, I crisscross them, and now I've created with both of the working ends of the rope to the inside. Once I crisscross, bring them to the inside, now I can slide that over top of an object, an axe, an anchor point, cinching that down, and I have utilized that clove hitch for an anchor knot. Now I need to use a backup half hitch or a backup overhand knot to secure that in place. As far as the handcuff knot, it's again the clove hitch, crisscrossing. Now, rather than bringing both loops around and crisscrossing them to slide over top of an object, I'm going to leave them as is. The 2 inside, or the 2 working ends, are touching. I'm now going to reach with my left hand and grab the right working end, and with the right hand grab the left loop working end, pulling them through the opposite loops, and I've created a handcuff knot that can be used for a lot of different reasons or a lot of different applications. The next knot that I'm going to review is going to be a family of knots. It's the double fisherman knot or the triple fisherman knot. For life rescue, we use a triple fisherman's. It's a stronger knot, but for quick application, possibly on the river, low angle rescue, we can use a double fisherman's. It's more than adequate. It's more than strong enough. However, to keep things simplified, we're gonna use the triple fisherman with all applications. I'm going to show you both knots so you know how to tie them. You're going to take both ends of the rope in your hands, and you're going to create a nice little X like so. We are now going to wrap back towards the center of the X, and then when we're done with our wraps, depending if it's a double or a triple, we're then going to take these last little sections right here, once we've wrapped towards the core, the center, or the X, and now feed it back through and pull it outward. It's going to create what looks like a barrel knot. You'll see here in just a second. So I'm going to start my wraps. Make sure that you have plenty of rope to start with this. I'm going to wrap once. These are full rotations. You'll see the X and the crisscross. Right there, if I were to send it through, it would be a double. I need one additional wrap to get the triple. And I can send it through. My guide is this actual piece of the rope right here. Once I come back around, I can send this through the center. I need to make sure that I get it through both these loops and the first one, like so. I'm going to pull that through. When I've done that, before I tighten it down, I'd like to have about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of tail right here. 2 inches is fine. There's no need to correct it. But I don't want it super tight right now. I can look at it and see the 1, 2, 3 that I have a triple fisherman's knot. Now I'm just going to mirror that on this side. This part of the knot is easier because this one's already kind of held the rope in place. So coming out, giving myself some room, start my first loop. There's 1, come back across, there's 2, and I need to complete it, come back through, sending this again through the center right here, and making sure that I capture it on the first loop right here, and that it's coming out with the rope and the end, the rope and the end. Got a nice little, and now I can actually tighten the knot up by actually grabbing the actual triple knot and pulling it towards the end to tighten it up. Once I've done that, the knot works by pulling on top of itself and tight. This knot is used primarily in the triple fisherman's wrap for our Prusix cords, for our capture device for a Prusix brake. These are also used if we needed to attach 2 sections of rope, maybe a 300-foot section that's already been deployed across the river. We need it to be longer. We're running out of rope. We could quickly tie, at a minimum, a quadruple fisherman's knot, joining the 2 ropes together, and then all we would need would be a kootenay or a large pulley that would allow this to pass through it. And we have 2 kootenays on the river rescue truck. That's the triple fisherman's. Now we're going to do the double fisherman's. Again, the double fisherman is not to be used in a high angle rope rescue or any type of life safety system that we're building. However, it can be used quickly to tension. Let's say we're going to build a movable control point across the river. We didn't have any Prusix ready to go. We could throw a quick double fisherman knot into a piece of Prusik cordage, get that ready, throw it into our system. It will capture the rope as we're pulling the slack out of the river just to capture it. We would replace it out as soon as we were ready to actually build our system. The double fisherman's. Same as the triple, you're going to crisscross the rope with 2 tails. Now again, wrapping back towards the X that we've created in our hands. Right here, we're going to wrap from the outside, wrapping back towards the center. Instead of 3 wraps, we're going to do 2 wraps. So underneath, 1, once we cross over, that's the completion of our first loop. Come back around, and now for our second, we've completed, and we're going to send it through the center. And it's going to come out just like so. We can count the loops. We have 1, 2, that's a double fisherman knot. Now to complete this for a Prusix cord, the opposite side should be easier. Loop underneath, around once, around twice, and now sending it back through the center. Coming out. Again, to tighten up this knot, you're going to pull that actual barrel knot towards the ends to snug up the knot. You can get them super tight. The tighter you get them, and once they're loaded, they're very difficult to get out. If this tail was too long, we could back that back in a little bit, and just simply by pulling back out, it will take up that distance to make a nice, neat tail. Tighten them up. When we're ready to use it, we're going to grab the working ends of the rope, pull them, bringing the barrels together, and we have a double Prusix knot. Now for one of our last knots, we're going to go over the Prusix knot. The Prusix knot is utilizing a piece of Prusix cordage, which is basic single person, single rescuer body cordage, around 7 millimeter, 8 millimeter cordage. We've placed in this a triple fisherman's knot, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's tight. Whenever we use a Prusix knot system, we have to use, if we're using one, we need to use two. We need to have that 15-to-1 safety factor. When we use it even in the low angle setting on the river, when we're attaching a boat for a movable control point, because we have rescuers in that boat, we're going to double up the brake. So we need two pieces of Prusix. Once we've gotten our Prusix, we need to make sure that we have different lengths. So with this, we need to set a Prusix cord either smaller than this one or longer. Now to actually show the Prusix knot, and we'll go into more detail on where those need to go when we build our RPM and Z-drag system. But for now, just the Prusix knot itself. Now when we begin to tie our knot, I will refer to the triple fisherman's, the actual loops of the knot themselves, as a barrel. I'm going to grab that barrel with my hand. Okay, controlling that barrel, I'm going to go over the actual line we're going to utilize this knot on. Over top, I'm going to send it under 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. When I pull it back through, I'm going to pull it off to either side. It doesn't matter to clear the knot so we have a clean attachment point. Now you can see there's a little bit of a mess here. It's not a problem. We're just going to rotate all these loops outward, this side to this, away from the actual knot itself. Now we're going to hold it. We're going to do the same thing on this side, working these loops outwardly. Being a little stubborn. You want it dressed fairly tight so it actually binds on the rope and does what it's intended to do. That Prusix knot is used to actually take the rope once it's loaded and bend it into an S. If you can zoom in and see this, you have the actual loops or barrels now. The important thing is that the actual loop or bite here goes from outside to outside, which gives you the greatest length of about maybe 2 inches, 2.5 inches, in order, when it loads, to bend the rope into an S. Prusix knots are designed to slip, not to fail, so it's not going to blow out. It's going to, once it's overloaded, it's just going to allow the rope to pass through and slip, which makes it safer to work with. We have the actual barrel of the the triple fisherman's knot out of the way for a clean attachment point to a carabiner. Sometimes when this knot is tied, this actual bite right here that I'm holding on to, rather than run from outside to outside, will run inside to inside, and if it's dressed up, it looks clean, it looks appropriate. However, it's not, because now it's trying to put that rope into an S with only about 2 centimeters worth of distance, and it's just not enough distance to get it done. So tighten it up, and there's your Prusix. Now I'm going to show you the water knot. The water knot is used to take, and it's a extremely strong knot. It's used to attach either 2 different ends, much like the double or triple fisherman's can be used to attach 2 pieces of rope. In this application, we're going to use it to make actual 1-inch tubular webbing anchor straps. We're going to start off with the water knot. You take the webbing, whether it's 1-inch webbing, 2-inch webbing, the knot works the same, but it's used for flat. You just put a simple overhand knot in the actual webbing itself. Now it's important not to crisscross, so we want to then run our hand flat and make sure that we don't have the webbing crisscrossed at all. Come to the other end. And this is simply a retracing knot. So once we've found the other end and it's flat, we've got our overhand knot here on the table. We're going to take this one and we're going to trace it. So we need to come underneath this in order for it to trace properly. Send this in, the flat piece in, like so, over top on the outside. Pull a long enough section through that you can complete the knot. Now I'm just simply tracing this around what I already have, tracing it and sending it back through. And I should have opposite tails. And this is the water knot. Very strong knot. This is the knot that we are going to use to attach our 1-inch tubular webbing to make anchor straps with.